Hi guys, so today's video is going to be an if you like this, try that book recommendations video. But before we jump into those, this video is sponsored by the app Likewise, and Likewise does exactly what I'm doing in this video. It is a recommendations app, and it has a lot of really fantastic elements to it that make it wonderful for getting new recommendations, not just with books. They also have movies, TV shows, a lot of different things. I know for myself, after I finished watching The Promised Neverland, which I greatly enjoyed, I was checking to see what they recommended next, and one of their recommendations was Erased. And when I did my review for The Promised Neverland, a bunch of you also recommended Erased. So I'm very excited to eventually get around to that anime. Once the app essentially learns your tastes based off of the things that you have saved, it will then give you today cards, which means that every day you get personalized recommendations and lists. Even though most of us are bookworms, they don't just recommend books to you, they can also give you recommendations for movies, TV shows, podcasts, so on and so forth. If one of them happens to be a book and it's something you are interested in, you can actually buy the book directly from the app. It has a link to send you directly to Amazon. If you're not quite ready to purchase it, or if it's just something that you are generally interested in, you can save it to lists and you can personalize your lists so you can have different ones for different things. Like I said before, they have books, TV shows, movies, podcasts, so you can have different lists for all the different things you're interested in. And if you have specific questions, you can access the Ask page, which is where you can ask the Likewise community questions. You just tap on the post icon at the bottom of the navigation bar, select Ask, click on the book, and post what you're looking for. You can follow other individuals on Likewise as well, see what they're interested in, what they're recommending, and if you're interested in having it for yourself, I'll have it linked at the top of the description bar down below. It is 100% free. Jumping into the recommendations for this video, I'm going to start with Theft of Swords and Traitor's Blade. Theft of Swords is written by Michael J. Sullivan, and Traitor's Blade is written by Sebastian de Castell, and they both have, I feel like, a very similar tone to them. So a lot of times when you get into adult fantasy, you're kind of buckling up for either a really intense magic system, or you're going to deal with a lot of gray morality that's very popular nowadays, especially with grimdark, or you're going to have this huge complex world. And I think what a lot of people like about each of these is that it is adult fantasy. It does tackle some heavier things in it, but they are just a good time. The feeling you have when you're reading these is that they are fun. They have kind of a bromance element in both of these. It's one of the things a lot of people really love about Theft of Swords. And then with Traitor's Blade, you have that as well. You have characters that are not quite as morally gray as you find with a lot of other characters. They are more of, I'm good because this is the right thing to do. But one of the characters in the bromance groups does have that slightly edgier, slightly darker, slightly grumpier kind of humor to them, which counters the very stoic, I'm a great person sort of character. So they are just a really good time. They're really fun. So if you like one of these, I think you should definitely check out the other. Next up, we have Nevernight and Wicked Saints. So when I was reading Wicked Saints, I just kept comparing it. I kept saying it was like a young adult version of Nevernight mixed a little bit with if you shipped the Darkling and another character, I don't want to say who, but if you shipped a certain ship from the Grisha trilogy, that was Wicked Saints. But I think Wicked Saints more is similar to Nevernight than it is Grisha, even though on surface level it seems very Grisha-like, but they both are super bloody. I think both of them kind of almost are self-aware of how much they use the word blood, how over the top edgy everything is. Nevernight is about somebody who is trying to get revenge and goes to an assassin school. Wicked Saints is a little bit different in its setup. We're following a character who is kind of the last hope for a certain cause, but they band together with somebody who is technically sort of from the enemy side, but they have to work together against a common enemy. But you see a lot of the blood coming from the fact that they're magic. They have to use their own blood, so there's a lot of injuring of oneself in that book. And then in Nevernight, you just have tons of violence all the time. Both of them are very extreme. Both of them are very over the top. Both of them are just super moody edgelord type of books. And if that's your thing and you think it's really fun, I think you should consider the other. Next up, we have The Thief and Assassin's Apprentice. So Assassin's Apprentice is the one I would say, as far as the people that watch my videos, is probably the more read. And I know that a lot of times people who are interested in adult fantasy don't always want to pick up young adult fantasy, but The Thief is a book that I feel like it doesn't really feel like what you would think of when you think of young adult. I enjoy both age ranges, but The Thief is a book that I think I mentioned actually in my young adult books for adults, that this one, I feel like a lot of people who like adult fantasy are going to enjoy The Thief. It has a very different setup. So Assassin's Apprentice, you are following somebody who unfortunately is the illegitimate child of a noble, but because of this, they do have some claim to power, and so the powerful that are currently in power keep them very close, and that individual pretty much never has any freedom of their own. And that is not at all the setup for The Thief. The Thief is about a young individual who gets into some trouble, but can get out of some trouble by agreeing to steal something on behalf of someone who is powerful. So there is a little bit of that same theme of you kind of just have to go with what the powerful want you to do. But I really don't think that it's the setup that makes these similar in any sense. I also don't think that the main characters' voices make it similar. In The Thief, the main character is kind of snarky and sometimes a little obnoxious, but ultimately I would say pretty entertaining. And then Fitz in Assassin's Apprentice, is just very sad. It's a very sad situation. Fitz is very sad. I feel like very, very in touch with their emotions. So it's a different feel of the characters, but the writing style, there's just something about the writing style in these books that feels very similar to one another. The way that they craft the story, they just kind of settle you in, and it feels kind of cozy and a little bit somber and dark. And in The Thief, I think you have this sort of silly character that sort of counters that, where in Assassin's Apprentice, I think it kind of leans into it with its character. But either way, the way that these authors tell the story, I think is very similar. I just kept getting Assassin's Apprentice vibes when I was reading The Thief. So if you like Assassin's Apprentice, I would recommend trying out The Thief. It's also extremely short, so you could probably binge it in a day or a weekend. Next up, I have a recommendation for if you like Sorcery of Thorns. I actually have two recommendations, and that would be Full Metal Alchemist and also the Bartimaeus trilogy. So the Bartimaeus trilogy is middle grade. I think that one actually is pretty similar in feel to Sorcery of Thorns. Sorcery of Thorns, to me, is a little bit on the younger side of young adult. It feels a little bit closer to middle grade, and the other one is middle grade, but I sometimes see it sold as young adult, so I think that they are similar in that sense. We also have this sort of alchemy feeling going on with both of these books, and then in Full Metal Alchemist, it's obviously alchemy, and there are some plot points that come up in Full Metal Alchemist, and I can't say which ones because I don't want to ruin the experience for you as a reader, but there's something that occurs in Sorcery of Thorns that, because I was familiar with Full Metal Alchemist, I was like, I know exactly what's happening right now. I know what the twist is. So then when it's revealed, it's like, yep, I knew that's what it was. And so there's some similar plot devices in both. And overall, I feel like age range wise, a similar audience can enjoy these. And also the feeling. I just feel like Sorcery of Thorns is just kind of a good time. Like I use fun and a good time a lot. I need to come up with better ways to describe them. But it's just, it's fun. It's fun. Sorcery of Thorns is fun. The Bartimaeus trilogy is fun, although sad in the end. And then Full Metal Alchemist, I also think is very fun, but also has some sad moments. So overall, I think if you like one of these, you can consider one of the other two. The last one for me is kind of interesting because I have sort of two recommendations for this one book. But one of the recommendations I don't actually like, but I totally get why someone else might like it. And then another one, there are some elements that are similar. So the book would be The Bear and the Nightingale. And then over for recommendations, we have Uprooted and then the Witcher series. So The Bear and the Nightingale, everybody always said, is this Russian folklore-inspired kind of historical fantasy story. and it's great for the winter. It's super atmospheric. I completely agree with all those descriptions. I have also seen it compared to Uprooted, and I completely understand why. It has a very similar feel when it comes to the folklore elements, how atmospheric both of them are. I just cared so much more about Vasya from The Bear and the Nightingale than I did Agnieszka from Uprooted. Agnieszka's, I'm not my favorite. She's just, I don't like Agnieszka. But I also felt like Uprooted was a little meandering, where I feel like in The Bear and the Nightingale, it's more contained and more like family drama, but the feeling, truly, the atmospheric folklore elements are very similar. But Witcher, I would say, I don't feel like the tone is necessarily all that similar. The characters are certainly not that similar, and the storytelling isn't really that similar. But I would say in both Witcher and The Bear and the Nightingale, you end up getting kind of creepy Central Eastern European folklore creatures. And I was reading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's kind of like in Witcher. And both of them, it's not the main focus of the story, but it plays a role. And when it comes up, it just feels like you're experiencing what the characters are experiencing, and the creatures are genuinely terrifying, creepy. You don't know what you would do in that situation. I just think that the way that the folklore creature elements are done in Witcher and The Bear and the Nightingale, they're just, I don't know, there's something about them that resembles one another. So if you like Witcher, maybe try The Bear and the Nightingale. It's so different in its storytelling, but that element of the story, I think, really shines for both of them. That's it for some books that if you like these ones, you might like some of the ones over here. I will have my other If You Like This, Try That videos linked, as well as the information for Likewise. Thanks again to them for sponsoring this video. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye.